Kevin Durant is back for the first time after missing 23. He is coming off the bench tonight.
To put his hand up like, hey, I'm 6'10 and I'm a sweet shooter. Find me. It's money. He looks like Kevin Durant.
I can show you who's boss, show you how to take off. Yeah, sit back, little homie, just to watch.
Kevin Durant's return to the court successful on all fronts.
Kevin Durant, welcome back.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome into First Take. It's Thursday, and we have a little special something for you today. It's a First Take, Her Take over. You know what it is. I'm Charlie Arnold. We got the ladies, also my co-hosts on the First Take, Her Take podcast joining us today. Kimberly A. Martin, Shanae Ogumake, they'll be with us in just a second. Also, Brian Windhorst going to be with us to kick off the show because you know we got to start with the perfection that is Kevin Durant. He came back last night after being gone for 23 games. Did not miss a step. So here's KD after the game.
I expected to come out here and play the way I played. I wasn't trying to ease into the game. I just wanted to go out there and dive right into the action. I mean, the game was already fast-paced already, so from watching it from the bench, I knew exactly how I needed to approach it. So, but it was pretty cool coming off the bench, I can't lie. But it was also good to play in front of the fans as well.
All righty, he is ready to go. He looked amazing last night. Shanae and Brian here with us right now. Shanae, I want to start with you. You think a healthy Nets team is a lock to win the title this year?
Okay, Charlie. Yeah, shout out to First Take, Her Take over. Let's go. And hey,
yeah.
Brian. Now, on paper, okay, the Brooklyn Nets, based on what we saw yesterday, my goodness, good Lord, they are a cheat code. I mean, it started with Blake Griffin. You saw that signature bounce back on the dunk. You had LaMarcus Aldridge with his beautiful turnaround fadeaway. And the main event, Kevin Durant finally back. It's just not fair. He was a plus 22 off of the bench, 17 points, in 19 minutes. This could be one of the best offenses we'll ever witness in NBA history. But, however, I am not there yet for two reasons to say that they are a lock. One, health. The big three have only played 7 games together still, and they only have 20 games left, I believe, to get it right. And it's such a small sample size to get prepared for really a title run. And two, let's talk about defense, because right now the Nets are 25th. In defensive rating. No team has ever won a championship with a defensive rating that low. I know they're loading up on offense, but defense, when the game slows down in the playoffs, will be crucial. And their defense will absolutely be tested because this is the best version of what? The Philadelphia 76ers that we're seeing right now. This is the best version of the Milwaukee Bucks. After they locked down Giannis, Chris Middleton, and now Drew Holiday, the Lakers are the defending champs, and there are a number of young teams making statements like the Jazz and the Suns. So when all the Brooklyn Nets players, they finally suit up, walk out there on the floor, and work to address their biggest question, their defense, that's when I'll say they're going to be a lock. But until then, we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, I don't know if you can say anything in the NBA is ever a lock, but this is one of the most impressive teams I've seen in my 18 years covering the NBA. Wow. I've never seen a team that has this type of offensive firepower. They are just absolutely so redundant. And when Kevin said that he was expecting to play well, I understand that because he's come back from other big injuries in his career and has played great immediately out of the gates. His game is a game that's kind of timeless. You don't have to be in great rhythm when you have an incredible offensive skill set like that. And Shanae, I agree. Their defense is a concern. But, they played pretty good defense last night. Nobody's been able to slow Zion down for months. They held Zion down, and I don't think that they're going to win games with their defense, but with their overall firepower, I think it's going to be really hard to beat them 4 out of 7. You may get them on a night where maybe one of their guys is dinged up, or you may get them on a night when their defense collapses or their older guys don't play so well, but I don't think you're going to do it 4 out of 7, and that's the name of the game in the NBA playoffs.
And Brian, this is where I want to sort of bring up another factor that people might be sleeping on. While we really love the offensive firepower that the Brooklyn Nets have, or just offense period with the way the game is officiated, I remember when I was playing, the refs had this meeting in preseason and they're like, all right, you can touch the defender once. We called it the hot stove rule, but after that, you can't touch him again. And guess what? Now the numbers have gone up with shooting, but defense is really interesting. And maybe it's the Final Four, the national championship carryover that I'm seeing with defenses winning championships in the collegiate level. But really, the Lakers, people sleep on the fact that the Lakers have the #1 defensive rating right now in the NBA, that the Utah Jazz, also a top and elite defensive team. A lot of the top teams in the NBA, apart, even the Philadelphia 76ers, apart from the offense, the top defensive teams in the NBA, they're doing it on both ends. And so when you look at that aspect of the game, Brian, do you think that this is the Lakers making a move to get Andre Drummond, a guy that averages like 13 rebounds a game, now bolstering that already #1 overall defense in the Lakers? I see the Lakers making a play at defense, knowing that Brooklyn is set up historically for offense.
This is going to be a test of history here, because historically you are correct. You have to be about a top 10 or 11 defensive team to be an NBA champion. The record speaks for itself. But we are playing in a season where we are seeing historically off-the-charts offense. 7 or 8 of the top 10 offensive seasons by team in NBA history are happening right now. I scan the box scores every single night, guys, and every single night there are teams that are shooting 53, 54% and losing. There are some teams whose records when they shoot 50% or better are around 500. In the past, you shot 50% in a game, that means you're almost going to win probably 85% of the time. And so the question is, when we get to the postseason, when we know you can prepare, some of these teams have had single-digit practices for the entire season to this point, since the year started. When in the postseason you can actually practice and game plan in between games, will we see a return to normalcy? The Lakers better hope so, because I don't think the Lakers offensively, which is what their weakness is. You're right, their defense is spectacular, but they can't bring it every night offensively. I don't think they can do it 4 out of 7 times. So they're going to have to hope that things return to what we normally see in the postseason, because if they don't, this is set for the Nets to win it.
So, Wendy, let's talk about the offensive power of the Nets. It's off the charts, but are you at all concerned about the chemistry between the big three? Because as we know, they've only played 7 games together this season so far.
The only chemistry I'm worried about is Kyrie and James Harden. I'm not worried about Kevin Durant at all. He has shown repeatedly that he can play with different lineups in different roles. Durant is one of the most malleable superstars I've ever seen. LeBron, because of all the guys he can defend, maybe a little bit more, but Durant can be so many different things to so many different teammates. I'm not worried about him at all. And I think their other guys, their older guys, are there knowing they're playing a role. The whole thing has been, can Harden and Kyrie coexist together, sharing the ball? And right out of the gates, I think Kyrie yielded to Harden. I think it was like the second or third week they were playing together. Kyrie said, James, you take the ball, you run our offense, I'll play off the ball, which was no small thing for him to say, even though that makes sense because you look at the way Harden was playing, you say, heck yeah, this guy's an MVP as a point guard. Kyrie left LeBron James because he didn't want to play that way. And so as soon as I saw that, now granted, it's tenuous because Kyrie tends to change his opinion and mood on things at times. But once I saw that, I said, look out for these Nets. And Kyrie and Harden do have quite a bit of time together so far.
I actually think that a lot of people are worried about something, that relationship, Kyrie Irving and James Harden, when they need not to be, because obviously these guys have unique personas that sort of make them polarizing figures. James Harden, with how he plays the game, well, he settled that by, taking a backseat and figuring out whatever role this team, the Brooklyn Nets, needs to win. Kyrie Irving, maybe for things not necessarily tied to the basketball court, but anytime something needs to get done, they find a way. Kyrie Irving, I think at the start of the season, it was clear that he wanted to be the guy, that this was his team. And we saw it through his performances. The thing that actually stood out to me the most, Brian, is actually when James Harden goes out because of the hamstring, what does Kyrie do to respond? Drops 40 points and knows to flip the switch and take over. These guys have each other's backs in a way that we don't really acknowledge all the time in the media. And I think that's what makes them special. Sort of the chip on the shoulder mentality that each and every one of them carry. So I'm not necessarily worried about, the personalities meshing. I think health, number one, first and foremost, will be the only thing that deters this team from a title.
Yeah, Chiney, I think you're absolutely right, because according to BPI, with the healthy big three, the Nets have a 22% chance to win the title. The only team with better odds as of this point are the Jazz with 24.5%. But let's talk about the Jazz, shall we?